storm. It's powerful. So we need to be quiet for a while.
It's good for the crops, that's for sure.
Just be still.
Welcome to Rewatch Play, your dive into the stories we love and how they're adapted, where we discuss the genesis of our favorite books, movies, games, and our sometimes not so favorite adaptations of those. We are coming to you live from the plains of Oklahoma. This is episode 6, and we are covering Killers of the Flower Moon. My name is Randy Barridge. I'm here with Nick Hinkson, who does a really bad Robert De Niro impression. Here we go.
Randy, you have no idea if my De Niro impression is good or bad. You've never heard it.
Dude, I know it's awful. I have heard shades of it, and it's not good.
What?
Yeah. It's like the guy at the party who thinks he can do a Christopher Walken, and he's just talking weird, but not actually doing anything.
Oh, like me on the last episode.
Yeah, actually, you did. That was you. Yeah. Yeah, so your resume isn't looking stellar. That's great. This is kind of new territory. I mean, the most recent thing we did prior was The Last of Us that came out this year, but this is the first theatrical release that we're covering in real time, where I don't have the luxury of Jurassic Park or The Shining, where I can sit on my couch and rewind 1,000 times to like think through quotes or anything like that,
or pause it.
Yeah, we had to go there, and you're trying to enjoy the movie, but I'm thinking about what I want to say for this, and it was a kind of challenging.
Oh, I completely agree. I thought about going and rewatching it yesterday in theaters.
Yeah,
But I don't have 25 hours and $200 to go to the movie theaters like 6 times to watch these movies.
Yeah,
and we're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, especially with this one, you're going to see it twice. That's a 7-hour commitment right there. But it was harder, and you're trying to, and we're what? I mean, you saw this more recently than me. I'm a little over a month from when this released in theaters, and I was trying to just watch, some scenes that they did for promos on YouTube and just try and refresh myself a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It was tough. It was tough.
Yeah, we'll see how this goes. We could bomb.
Yeah. This is also big in the sense that we have another Scorsese team-up movie here. This is his 6th movie with Leo and his 10th with De Niro. And I'm just curious, do you have a favorite Scorsese or a favorite team-up of those 3?
Goodfellas?
Yeah, Goodfellas. It's
good. It's got to be Goodfellas.
Yeah, it's hard. That to me is a near perfect movie.
Yeah,
and it stood the test of time, I think, in a lot of ways. And when I think of Scorsese, I think of Goodfellas. It's hard not to pick that one. The only other considerations I had were I had an amazing theater experience for The Departed. I can't remember how old we were when Departed came out, but I vividly remember seeing it in theaters. And it was one of those times where as the end of the movie was happening and everybody was starting to get picked off in that insane scene at that like apartment building.
Yeah.
Like the crowd was just losing it in the theater. And then when you go to the end, it's going to spoil The Departed right here. And Mark Wahlberg is in the apartment with those little, shoe things on, waiting to kill Matt Damon, and the theater was like literally cheering, and that might have been the first time I've heard like cheers in a movie theater. So that was I have great memories of The Departed in theaters. Also an excellent movie.
Yeah, Boomer Randy going to see things in theaters.
I know, that's me. Yeah, but I mean in terms of, because Leo wasn't in that, but but he wasn't in Goodfellas, but he was in The Departed. I don't think I've seen. I know I'm blanking on it now. Gonna have to cover it later. There's one. I think it's only a short they've done where all three of them have been together.
Oh, really? So okay.
So this might be the first time that I think all three of them, because Leo wasn't in The Irishman.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, but I mean, it's big. I mean, and Marty's getting up there. I don't know how many more he's got in the tank, but he's at least reaching these kind of final few in his career, which is sad to think with the track record he has is better than almost anyone in history.
Yeah. I hope that the last couple we get are just as good as what we've been getting. I hope De Niro's in them. Maybe a Leo appearance again. I just think if Scorsese did his final film and De Niro wasn't in it, I would be upset about that.
Yeah.
Because of how many classics they've put out together. I think that final nod, even if it was both of their last films, I would watch it 100 times, no matter how good it is, just out of respect for what they've done in cinema together.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think a lot of people feel that way. I mean, even some of the cast, there was John Lithgow, who was one of the lawyers, said he's like, he would have played, I forget, paraphrasing, like, side character Z in this movie just to be part of the ensemble. Where he's like, I just see, Scorsese leading this, and you got De Niro kind of in it as well. And he's like, I just got to be in this. I just want to be around that cast and that team and the group and the crew that Marty puts together. So it's fun to see, and I think it's exciting. If you enjoy movies and that stuff, and you followed his career a bit.
I mean, speaking of Scorsese movies, why don't you hit us with a little bit of a synopsis? What are we talking about today?
Yeah. I mean, and at the start, we're going to spoil, obviously, this book and movie. I mean, I don't think even, especially the movie wise, this isn't going to take away from your experience, us spoiling it, if you only see the movie, because they pretty much spoil it right from the get-go. And it's also, it's at this point, 100-year-old history. But, I'm a person who likes to go into things blind. So if you want to do that as well, I understand. Something new here we're going to do is kind of this, judging a book by its cover, reading out the synopsis of the story here. I was going to write my own synopsis of this, and then I read at the back of the cover and I was like, this guy who wrote this book knows what he's doing. This is way better than anything I was going to write.
It's weird. The author does sometimes know the source material.
He does. Yeah. He's written, a few things in his time. So here we go. In the 1920s, the richest people per capita in the world were members of the Osage Nation in Oklahoma. After oil was discovered beneath their land, they rode in chauffeured cars and lived in mansions. Then one by one, the Osage began to be killed. Molly Burkhart watched as her family became a prime target. Her relatives were shot and poisoned. Other Osage were also dying under mysterious circumstances, and many of those who investigated the crimes were themselves murdered. As the death toll rose, the case was taken up by the newly created FBI and its young, secretive director, J. Edgar Hoover. Struggling to crack the mystery, Hoover turned to a former Texas Ranger named Tom White, who put together an undercover team, including a Native American agent. They infiltrated this last remnant of the Wild West, and together with the Osage began to expose one of the most chilling conspiracies in American history. Nick, I started this book and I read early 1900s, Native Americans, oil money, and I was like, this is going to go about as bad as things can go.
And you were not wrong.
It almost went worse than I could have even expected.
If Hollywood wrote this, I wouldn't have believed it for a second. You know what I mean? Yeah. It reads like a bad Western, but knowing it's true, it's just that much more heartbreaking, I guess is the way I would want to say that. Just, it's not a holiday read. It's not uplifting. It's not it's, you gotta be ready to read what you're getting yourself into. I mean, it's rough at points.
Yeah. I mean, and I think the movie even there is this unbelievability to what's going on in the book, where I think the movie is a little bit more of just shocking from the brutality end of how like much this is carried out. And, from the book end, we kind of divide into these 3 parts where you get this sort of background of what's going on, how the Osage came to be there, and, who are the players in this area at the time. And you move into kind of the mystery, the whodunit, as Tom White mentioned in that synopsis comes in. And then you kind of close out with a long wrap up of how the author did this and how he investigated it and how he worked with the Osage community modern day. And the movie takes a little bit of a different track, and we won't go completely into that yet. But you focus a lot more on these sort of central characters, this Molly Burkhart, Ernest Burkhart, and William Hale, who's played by kind of our 3 sort of marquee characters on the call sheet of Lily Gladstone, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Robert De Niro.
I think people know Leo. You can.
Yeah, I was gonna just say Leo, but it felt a little informal.
I thought, didn't you guys hang out last weekend?
Yeah, I know.
Aren't you buds?
Yeah. I'm not a 24-year-old girl or whatever. I'll probably cut that out.
No, you're not allowed.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not even sure if that's the age range for
that. Might be too
him.
Old.
Yeah, it might be too old. When did the story come into awareness for you? And I think on 2 facets, I'm curious. 1, did you know about the Osage community at all? And 2, when did you learn that this was a book and a movie, and how did that come to be?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and honestly, I'm a little embarrassed to have to admit that I didn't know about this book until you'd sent it to me, and you said we should read this, we should cover it, you're gonna love it, and I did, and you were right. As far as the Osage community, I was familiar with them, especially living in Houston, and you talk about oil and gas with people, and you go to any of the big oil and gas companies, and in their lobby, they have things about where they're drilling and the communities there. So they definitely weren't unfamiliar. But the atrocities that had been committed against them, I was completely unaware of until I read this book. And then for that reason alone, I'm really glad I learned this history because it's eye-opening.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's partly, you have the sense of like, wow, I should have known about this. But I think it's also like a failure of our education system that stories like these are buried until someone like David Grann, kind of writes about them and keeps it going a little bit. I actually, before I even say any more on that, I totally forgot that being in Houston, this is a little bit more, has proximity to you, especially with the industries there. So I didn't even think, because me, I had not heard of the Osage, and I knew of the things that how they came to Oklahoma, involved in kind of like the displacements and what was going on then in the U.S., Trail of Tears. But I didn't know about them specifically. And I only learned about this I follow movie news, and I'm a dork like that. And I knew, Scorsese was attached to a new movie that was coming out. And once I heard about that, I started to look into it more. And then I learned, I was like, oh, wow, this is based on a book. I was like, I definitely want to read this before the movie comes out. And I think we both started it over the summer, or sometime around then. It might have been early fall, in kind of preparation for that. And yeah, I thought it was really good. I enjoyed it. And, kind of the title reads a little bit, there's almost like this appendix to it that is like the Osage Murders and the Birth of the FBI. Like this sounds like a book that's like on your dad's bookshelf. Yeah. Like they like slip in like this FBI part to, I think, like cast a wider net, because you see the title and you're unsure of like Killers of the Flower Moon. What's this about? Which I think is kind of an awesome title.
It's an S tier title, by the way.
It's a really good one.
It's a great title.
Yeah. But I'm curious to know, just like right off the bat, like, what did you think? Book, movie, what was your takeaways here?
Yeah. So I really enjoyed the book. I thought there was a lot of things the book did really well. And I know we're going to talk about that in a second, so I'll hold off. But just high level ratings, I'd give the book overall 4 out of 5 on Goodreads. I thought it was an excellent book. And if you put it into the nonfiction category specifically, it's definitely a 5 out of 5. It is one of the best nonfiction books I think I've ever read, both from an informational standpoint and just the way it was written. The movie, I was a little more hesitant of. It was long. We just talked about it was 3.5 hours. I don't really think it, because of the direction they took the story, I don't think 3.5 hours was needed. But maybe you disagree. And the other thing I would say is, I still don't know how sold I am on the perspective of the movie. And so for that reason, I'm somewhere around like a 3 out of 5. And just to clarify, like a 3 out of 5 is good. It's good, not great. Like a 4 would be excellent, and a 5 is life-changing. 2 is not good. 3 is a very good movie still.
Yeah.
So just to clarify what that means there.
Yeah, that's helpful. Yeah, I agree on the bookend. I thought David Grann, I always am hesitant of, is it Gran or Graham? It's Gran. I feel like
2 ends.
Yeah, I feel like Will Ferrell in Step Brothers. Pam. I thought he had like a really addictive writing quality, and he's kind of he's a journalist for the New York Times, I think is where he got like a lot of his chops from. But he does an excellent job of writing this sort of whodunit mystery of a nonfiction story, but he tells this with such like storytelling chops that this is not a slog of a nonfiction read that some history can be.
Oh yeah.
And while this is a very faithful, brutal account of the absolutely horrible things that happened, he weaves like this empathetic narrative around this that just keeps you glued to the page. And I thought he did a really good job of that. I really enjoyed the final act structure of getting some of this wrap up, but it was a little disorienting when the mystery, in quotes, was solved. And I was like, I still have like 120 pages. Like, this, what is going to be covered?
A third of the book.
Yeah, a third of the book. That was a little bit disorienting, but I think as I reflect upon the relationships he built in the Osage community, and he was having people come up to him and ask him to investigate their families and try and figure out what happened. There's this really, you can see the trust he built there. And I came away appreciating that. And I think that this is, I think getting on my like soapbox a little bit, this is like story, history doesn't have to be dry. And he told this, like, stories are so important. And he told this in a way, and not that it needs to be like embellished because these are completely awful things that happened. But it's important for these stories to live on, for us to know what happened and remember that, to learn from it. And he does this in a way that is, you want to keep reading and you want to learn more. And I think that is a huge feat of the book.
I completely agree. I actually had almost the exact same thing in my notes here. I mean, I thought the background on the characters was perfect. He did a really good job giving you enough that you had a sense of who these people were without bogging you down with everyone they've ever talked to and everything that they've ever done. Now, I will concede that some of that may be a lack of availability of the information, because it is, Oklahoma 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they did not do a great job of record keeping there. But, nevertheless, I think it worked really well. And I right here in my notes, at no point did I feel like I was reading a history lesson.
Yeah.
Even when it got a little bit tangential, I thought it was a really nice commentary on what was going on at the time. So, for example, when he starts talking about Little House on the Prairie and the monkey trials at the time, it was enough information to provide context of, time and place without, again, being dry and feeling like a history lesson. Even when David starts getting into some of the secondary characters, there's enough detail to make you go like, oh, okay, that's wild. That's cool. I want to know more about this. And that you have enough to do that on your own without being bogged down in the book if you don't want it. Some other nonfiction, like you said, some other nonfictions we've read for this and that we'll be covering later were super dry, hard to get through, wrong, didn't need it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think with that and, with the context of those characters, I feel like it's a pretty good, what did the movie do well from a character perspective for you?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for my thoughts on the movie, there's a lot to unpack, and I'm longer out than you, and I think that's influencing me a bit.
Yeah.
I thought it was excellent. It took me by complete surprise, the direction they went with the story. And to set this up a little bit, like I mentioned, you're honing in more through the full story with these few cast of characters. And that is, Leo as Ernest Burkhart, who's married to Molly Burkhart, who is Lily. And Ernest is the nephew of William Hale, who's kind of this unofficial mayor of this town. And, the story is kind of told where after oil was found on the land, after they'd been moved there, all of the Osage were given these called head rights, and they owned this land and they could not sell it. And they could lease it, and they started leasing it out to these oil companies. And that is how they became, as the book said, the highest or the richest people per capita in the world, almost like overnight.
Yeah.
And this led to all of these people just extorting, manipulating, putting everything that they could think of to acquire and get a share of this money from them. Absolutely possible they were doing. And Ernest, like many others, ends up marrying an Osage woman, and slowly but surely members of her family and are falling ill and dying, and head rights are being consolidated into these people. And there were these guardianships where the Osage could not spend their own money freely. They were sort of rich in theory, but they were really restricted they had to have white guardians who could control how they spent this money. So this is kind of the context of what's going on in this story. So then you focus in on this Molly and Ernest and Hale, and I was blown away, going back to my thoughts on the movie here, blown away when in the first 20 minutes, when they reveal to the audience that William Hale is the bad guy here.
Yeah.
Robert De Niro. I was shook. I couldn't believe it. And I was at first, I was feeling already a bit defensive in the theater. And I was like, why did they do this? Why did they do this? And I'm sitting there.
Yeah.
I went with my fiance to watch the movie.
Yeah, congratulations, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. And I was like, oh, man, because she loves, a good whodunit mystery. But I sat back and I continued to watch, and we're going to talk a lot about that decision. So I'll say, in addition to that, I thought the performances were excellent. I thought the cinematography, which we'll talk about, some of the crew was really well done. For me, I thought it zipped by for the length it was. Not that 3.5 hours is going to ever fly by, but for the length that it was, I thought it moved at a really good clip.
Okay.
And there was this refusal to shy away from just how bad things that happened to these people were. And they were told with, kind of no holds barred. And it wasn't, I think, excessive like a sort of a Tarantino film, but there were some really deeply unsettling scenes that were so straightforward, it was alarming.
Yeah.
And I think the decision to convert this from a whodunit mystery like the book, which as I reflect on it could be really sort of insensitive, was maybe the right choice. And it flipped my perspective almost instantly in the theater. And I read this after where Marty was at the Cannes Film Festival. And he said, he's like, this is not a whodunit. It's a who didn't do it sort of story. And that I was like, holy shit, like you're kind of right. So yeah, I think this movie took a tact or approach that I wasn't expecting. And I came away appreciative of maybe how it even just expanded on my thoughts on the book. And I think from a movie making standpoint, this is Scorsese at his best. And Scorsese at his best is one of the best to ever do it. And I'm excited to watch this again. I've only seen it once in theaters, but I'm looking forward to getting into it again. And I will say, do I like it better than the book? I would. We'll talk about this at the end. I would say read the book. It flies by. It's not long.
No.
But I think they did a really good job, and there were some real standout performances and just crafting of scenes in this movie that I think are worthwhile for anyone to dive into, especially when it's on streaming.
Yeah, that's a great point. And honestly, the only thing I have to add to that, you're right, Scorsese's brilliant. I thought it was shot beautifully. I think
so good.
The use of camera angles, the use of lighting, and the use of sound were incredible in this movie. And there's two scenes where I felt the sound alone transported me to another level with watching the movie. And then I thought the acting was brilliant. I genuinely believe we're going to see multiple awards given to this movie from an acting perspective.
Yeah.
Let alone the other things that we've just mentioned. Just from an acting perspective, I would be shocked if 2 or 3 people didn't take home awards for this.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, in the movie, I'm just so glad they didn't pull any punches on making Ernest, Bill, and the rest of the non-Osage community just absolutely deplorable people in the movie. They're right from the get-go. They're awful people doing awful things. And I am really glad that it was portrayed that way.
Yeah. And also in Ernest's case, which I didn't really think about reading the book, a complete moron. Like,
oh my God.
He is such a dumbass. And like not in like I obviously don't like him, but I mean literally just stupid.
Yeah.
Like being completely manipulated by everyone around him. Yeah. So let's cover some brief background. There's not much, to do here since this just came out. We'll cover some just quick background of just how this adaptation came to be, and then we'll get into our categories after that.
Sounds good.
Some brief background. So this 2017 nonfiction book by David Grann. We talked about this. He's a writer for it was the New Yorker. I said New York Times earlier. Has kind of a short bibliography. Includes Lost City of Z. That's the only other one I'm familiar with. I've heard of that. Killers, The White Darkness, and a novel released this year called The Wager, A Tale of Shipwreck, Mutiny, and Murder. Honestly, that sounds great. I read that title. I know. I read that title. I was like, I'm in.
Sold. You had me at Shipwreck, Mutiny, and Murder.
Yeah.
It sounds like a pirate book. Yeah.
Yeah. Keywords that I search when looking for a book.
Yeah.
Said he took really a journalistic approach to this. You kind of read this last third of the book and you see how much time he was spending in these libraries, in these archives, going through these documents. piecing all of this together, not just of the story he wanted to tell, but then after the relationships he built in the Osage community, stories that they wanted him to tell, that they didn't have the luxury of getting to investigate because this was such a taboo topic in this community for so long, because these people were so scared that there was just something not discussed. And it was a very sort of unique way he went at this, given his skills. And I think it really paid off. And I think hopefully it also brought a lot of closure to some families, you know, even though it was complete tragedy.
Yeah.
But he seems to have done a really, you know, just damn good job building trust with the Osage, telling the story, bringing it to light again. Not much more to say there on the background.
I think you nailed it. I think the rest of it we talked about, like you said, it's only a 6-year-old book.
Yeah, it's 2017. Movie-wise, like we said, this is our most recent entry. This came out on October 20th of this year, 2023. Hotly anticipated. Marty co-wrote this with Eric Roth, who has some pretty big ones under his belt. Dune, you know, which we just covered. He did Forrest Gump, Munich, Stars Born. So some big stuff out of them too. This was interestingly an Apple Studios movie. And one of the first that I can recall of being in Apple Studios. It's kind of like when what was the Glass Onion? Knives Out. When Knives Out was produced by Netflix and came to theaters for that week. This was a little bit different of a release sort of cycle in theaters, where Knives Out was a week only in theaters, I believe, where this has had a little bit longer of a theatrical run. But this wasn't produced by Warner Brothers, not Paramount. This was an Apple Studios movie.
Ultimately, I think that's a net positive, though. That more, and I know it's Apple and they're still a mega company, but I think just the more studios that are doing that, the more opportunities we have for really great content to come back to movie theaters that isn't all IP based.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a win for this movie, even if, you know, the box office isn't like a blowing away win.
Which it kind of is, though, right?
For this type of story, for a 3.5-hour drama, I think it did great.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about the cinematography, you know, and how great that was. So I just want to shout, you know, some of these people out. This was Rodrigo Prieto. He's a frequent Marty collaborator, has been his guy for a while. Outside of a lot of stuff he's done with Scorsese, like Wolf of Wall Street, you know, Irishman, you know, he did Argo, you know, Best Picture winner. He did Barbie this year as well. Cinematography was excellent in this movie. We talked about his movie stars. The only one we haven't mentioned, because his role was really downplayed in the movie, was Jesse Plemons as Tom White. Was also a big casting that I was interested in. One thing I did when I was reading this book, I was not looking at the IMDb and trying to think of who was who, and I was so wrong. And the other one I just wanted to shout out on the crew was this was the 11th film with Scorsese and his composer Robbie Robertson.
Wow.
Before Robertson passed away 2 months before the release of this.
Oh, no way.
And and I sometimes feel that music choices in Scorsese movies don't always hit for me. Sometimes they really hit, sometimes they don't. Marty likes to go back to a lot of similar songs. But I thought the sound in this movie was really good. You know, for this being Robbie's last film with Scorsese, it was, I think, an excellent sort of swan song for Robbie Robertson for the last of his career with Martin. I'll be brief on this other stuff. You know, then there was a bidding war for this book that was eventually won for $5 million, and it was directorless until Scorsese committed after he wrapped up The Irishman. Production started with Marty heading to the Osage Nation. He met with them a lot, spent a lot of time there to discuss how he could involve them in the movie, how he could, make sure he was getting their story right and telling this in a way that reflects what they wanted to see on screen and the true history of their people. And I think the biggest thing that happened with this production along the way was there was a huge pivot. And this was, like we said, the book originally centered on Tom White, and the FBI really took over as the protagonist in the book for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way the movie was being written. It was being written in this mystery novel style, with Leo playing Tom White, the FBI agent who comes in to solve this.
Really?
And yeah. And a couple years into it, Leo petitioned Martin and said that he doesn't think that this is the way the story should be told on screen. And that this was creating too much of a focal point on Tom and the FBI and drawing too much undeserved attention and praise for them. And that this should be a more centralized story on Molly and Ernest. And he wanted to change his character from Tom to Ernest Burkhart, which a huge change. And they completely rewrote the script with Leo saying that he thought this would have just been your run-of-the-mill whodunit mystery story, and that telling it this way makes this a huge marquee drama movie that can make a real splash in the world, as opposed to just another story being told. Big change.
I'm floored that was a Leo thing. And I'm not trying to disrespect Leo there, but just for one person to have not only that thought, but then act on it and really try to make it focus on, more about Molly. And I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, and this is not, you're not petitioning, Johnny Nobody over here directing this movie.
No, and you're really when you do that on a movie with a budget like this, you're really, and I know it's Leo, but he's still sticking his neck out there for not only that creative decision, but for the people that were truly involved and the people that truly deserved the recognition in this movie. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a nice hat tip we'll give to Leo there. It's a good decision. I mean, in going from the hero of the book to the complete idiot.
Yeah.
It's not like he was petitioning for a better role, or a more, he's, like I said, he's not petitioning for the protagonist hero in this sense.
Yeah. And I want to be clear when I say, who deserved the recognition, and that's Molly, her family, and the rest of the Osage community.
Totally.
Ernest and Bill Hale can rot for all, but
kick rocks.
Yeah. Pound sand.
Yeah. Pound sand. Some quick reception, box office. We're sitting at about 147 million worldwide. Was on a budget of 200 million claimed. But with the time released on Apple, I mean, who knows, how this is doing financially. And like we said, I think that this is still a win, that a movie that is, even though it, is Scorsese and Leo, and De Niro. I mean, this is a 3.5 hour drama.
Yeah.
That is not necessarily like a happy watch, and not that a movie needs to be happy to sell well, but this is, in today's culture of movie going, this is like not something people are typically showing up for. And I think it did well.
Yeah.
Critical reception, pretty stellar across the board. A- on Cinema Score, 4.2 out of 5 on Letterboxd, 93 on Rotten Tomatoes. This is, like you said, I guarantee this is going to win some awards. It's going to be a good year at the Oscars. I'm excited. I mean, this strongest competition is a book that it's kind of so similar in some ways too, with Oppenheimer. It's going to be interesting to see, how the Oscar race plays out between Oppenheimer and Killers of the Flower Moon, not just for a best picture, but for a cast as well. There's so many good candidates in both. I want to hit on here too, the Indigenous response to this. And Absolutely. I'll be interested to hear your thoughts, just being a little bit closer to there in Texas. There's been really mixed. Osage community has been very complimentary of the film and getting to tell their story. There was a huge effort done by Scorsese and others in the film to bring that in. And Lily Gladstone, also as you're just casting in general, bringing Native Americans and Osage into the movie was a really intentional choice. But there's been, a lot of criticism as well. I think one of the big ones, which I just want to pull out and quote them or paraphrase them specifically instead of giving my own thoughts, which are a little bit irrelevant for this. Devery Jacobs, a Native American actress, had a lot of issues with it. She's in the Hulu series Reservation Dogs. And she came out and said, imagine the worst atrocities that are committed against your ancestors, and then having to sit through a movie that is explicitly filled with them, with the only respite from the brutal killings being long scenes of murderous white guys talking about and planning those killings. I mean, that's fair. I mean, yeah. I'm in no position to really take a stance or, question her. And I think one of the most important things she also said was, that the Native people have an existence and stories beyond just grief, trauma, and atrocities. And every movie and every television show doesn't need to be about that when it's related to Native Americans. And I can't fault her for that, because that is what happens 100%.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add?
No. I think you can't talk about this without touching on it. And, again, like you said, I am in no position to take a stance. But I hope with some of these criticisms comes change and some things that maybe hit theaters that show that other side of things. And I think that would be really cool. And I hope that, by them speaking up and voicing their criticisms and having this dialogue, that there's a better, tomorrow in the terms of cinema and what that community sees.
Yeah, agreed. Great way to go out. Let's take a break here, and then we'll get into our rapid fire questions and categories. Pew, pew. All right. I'm assuming, actually, I'm not assuming. I know you got some rapid fire questions. Let's hit them.
I always have the rapid fire questions.
Yeah.
All right. No context. Just answer the question. You know the rules. Letter grade only. Lily Gladstone's performance.
Oof. A+.
Who had a better performance, Leo or De Niro?
Who had a better frown for 3 hours? Like, are their faces just stuck like that? Like, literally stuck. It's like Leo was imitating De Niro's frown for 3.5 hours. Oof. I'm going to go De Niro.
Okay. Did David Grann insert too much of himself into this book?
He did insert himself a lot into the book. I'm gonna say yes, but it was worth it, and I can expand on that later.
Okay. Did this book change your perception of the FBI and Hoover?
No, I already thought Hoover is kind of a slime ball. I don't know about you. I have a sense that you're a history buff, and by a sense, I've known you for nearly 30 years. Yeah. So I'm I don't know. That's a little bit unfair of a take, but I wouldn't say it changed my perspective. What I will say, reading this so close to Oppenheimer, a fantastic book double feature. Hearing what's going on there in that world of sort of the investigation and what's going on here in this world of the investigation, and the complete, just the level of investigation and care that they are placing on a story like Oppenheimer, and the complete nonplussed care at all that they placed on all of these Native Americans being murdered. I mean, it is night and day, the lengths they went to for these two opposite stories. So, man, J. Edgar Hoover, probably not a good guy.
Probably.
Definitely not a good guy.
All right, and I got one bonus question. Do you think Lily Gladstone's going to win an Oscar for this? Probably Best Supporting Actress.
If she is in supporting actress, that is, I think she'll win.
Okay.
If she is in Best Actress, I haven't seen. There's a movie coming out this winter, called Poor Things with Emma Stone that is getting a lot of buzz and is supposed to be a real masterpiece. Which I believe is going to be some competition for Best Actress. I haven't seen it, so I can't comment on it. I would love it, based on what I've seen this year, and I've seen a lot of movies that came out this year. Lily Gladstone's performance is the best I've seen.
Yeah. And I feel that she should be up for Best Actress. However, I have a feeling they're going to put her in Best Supporting Actress. And I agree that if she ends up there and she wins it hands down, if she ends up in Best Actress, I still think she could win the Oscar for Best Actress. But again, I haven't seen, this movie, Poor Things. We'll have to see that. And
but I'm just going to see who's getting buzz right now. Predicted nominees. Emma Stone for Poor Things, Lily Gladstone for Killers of the Flower Moon.
Is this actress? Best Actress?
This is actress. Carey Mulligan for Maestro, that it's going to be the Bradley Cooper directed movie, which is also supposed to be incredible. Anatomy of a Fall, I have not seen, Sandra Huller. And then Origin, on Janae Ellis Taylor, which I have not also seen. So I can't comment on any of the others. All I can go on is what I know of Lily. I'm very excited to see Poor Things. Yeah, she's great.
It was so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Her performance too. Yeah.
Any other rapid fires you got?
No, let's. I have some other questions, but I'm going to save them for our categories.
Cool. Let's do it. Most important thing that this movie needed to get right for it to be a successful adaptation. What's it got to be for you?
And I think you're going to say the exact same thing, but the way the atrocities are portrayed, you need to not pull any punches, and you need to show this awful side of American history, or else it just doesn't work. I don't know how else. It's unfair to the community, and it's unfair to anyone who's read the book, and it's unfair just to history if you don't show that accurately.
Yeah, I agree. You can't baby step around this one. Can't soften the blow. You can't dramatize this in a way that is unfaithful to what happened. You got to just tell the story of what happened. And I think for this to work and to be a movie that not just functions now, but people look back on and say this was the right telling, you have to do that. No doubt.
Absolutely.
Best book scene. What do you got?
You know what? I'm going to say Tom White's Arrival, and not that that's the. I don't know that that's. I would say is like the best scene in the book, but that scene in particular sticks out because, again, if Hollywood wrote that, I wouldn't believe it for a freaking second. A ragtag team of misfits led by the old school Texas Ranger who doesn't conform to new standards that Hoover's sent is being assembled to solve a crime, in quite frankly, middle of nowhere, Oklahoma. Like, I'm sitting there like thinking, is this right? Am I reading a book, or is this like a bad Western? I'm just picturing like George Clooney and Brad Pitt like putting together a team to rob Terry Benedict here. It's like, I'm like, what is this? And that's the truth. And it is wild to me that not only that team was assembled, but that they were as effective as they were.
This is embarrassing. Did not know that the Texas Rangers were like, what would you call them? Like an outlaw detective group?
Yeah.
Or like a sanctioned vigilantes in a way.
Pseudo law enforcement.
Yeah, we can cover that in what we got wrong, because I'm sure I don't know.
This feels like a Velociraptor moment.
Yeah, but I didn't know. I was just like, as a baseball team, the Texas Rangers, but they were actual Rangers. His arrival, and in the book, this kind of tees it up. You get this, you start to understand, set the scene of who is Tom White, where is he coming from, what type of guy is he, which I think in a lot of ways he seems like a real stand-up guy from how David Grann wrote him for the time. I mean, pretty much a saint in the 1920s. That's when you really shift into the FBI end of this a little bit and see what's going on with Hoover.
Yes.
And Tom's arrival coming from Texas, as an agent of Hoover's to solve what's going on here. And only solved here after the Osage literally paid the FBI to come and investigate, because they literally couldn't get off their ass otherwise to care about all of these people being murdered. And Tom arrives, and you get this context of who he is. And this is also in the book coming off the heels of everyone who is trying to investigate what is going on either winds up dead or goes missing.
Or is just paid off and leaves.
Or is just paid off and gets the hell out of there. So you get the arrival of this guy who is unknown in Oklahoma to infiltrate, undercover this community. And he doesn't do that. He publicly comes in as the guy who's investigating, but he builds this team of undercover operatives, including some Native Americans to come in for different reasons. Some are pretending to be cattle ranchers and, whatever, all these other professions.
Yeah, I think we should actually touch on that, because I think a lot of those, I'm going to call them cameos because it wasn't really addressed in the book, may go unnoticed in the movie, but the insurance agent, FBI, FBI, Tom White comes in as Tom White. The Native American gentleman who comes in towards the end, and you see him start saying he's looking for his family, that was an FBI agent. And they talk about him a lot in the book, and I think that was well done in the book as well. There was, you just said, the cattle rancher, who only got like a brief like on-screen moment in the movie, and I feel like there's one I'm missing.
Yeah, I can't remember.
I mean, either way, I get why they weren't shown, and based on the direction the movie went. But I think it's important, if you haven't read the book but watched the movie, to know who they are.
Yeah,
and why those characters are making these weird one-off appearances on the screen.
Yeah, I agree. That was the closest thing we had to like kind of an Easter egg in the movie. Was these undercover operatives that we'd read about, which was really fascinating the way he went about that. It was cool.
Yeah.
The only honorable mention that I'll throw out for book scenes were the court scenes. It was just nice to see William Hale get his comeuppance. And this was, in the movie, Robert De Niro's character. And we haven't explained this yet, but William Hale was this wolf in sheep's clothing in the book, where he was this friend to the Osage. He was almost the unofficial mayor of this town, who was, supposed to be helping them and helping them find out who's doing this. And had many, Osage friends. And all along, he is a key player in orchestrating all of the awful things that are going on. And finally getting to see Ernest throw him under the bus and them both get locked away was satisfying, even though it's a little bit of a hollow victory, but a victory nonetheless.
I also think the book did a really good job, and arguably better than the movie. If you think back to those scenes, Molly was in attendance the whole time, listening to what her husband and Bill and Ernest's brother and the rest of them are doing to this community. And the book portrays her as this rock, this unmovable force in the courtroom, just this, unbelievably solid human being whose power helps the rest of the people having to watch what's happening. And those were really powerful scenes, were parts of those scenes that you just talked about in the book. I don't know that I got as much power from it in the movie, but I guess, to that, what did the movie do really well for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think, to me, the best movie scene was hands down the first dinner scene at Molly's. And we're getting,
That's a good one.
I'll throw some more praise on Lily Gladstone and best casting, but to not only go toe to toe with Leo, but to almost steal, not even almost, to steal the scenes with Leo. I mean, she just has such a commanding presence in the movie.
Yeah.
And this scene where she is really controlling Ernest, where, they're kind of in their courting stage still of Ernest marrying Lily. And they have this dinner where she invites him over and they're, laughing and drinking whiskey, and she's being flirtatious and almost toying with him. And she's just running it. And it's also one of the first images we had out of the movie of them sitting there with the dark backdrop, on the same side of the table. And it's just really powerful. And if you'll kind of allow me to movie nerd out a bit, there's this huge inversion that we get in movies in American history here, where, especially with Westerns, the cowboy was always the symbol of the hero, and the Native American was always the symbol. They were demonized and dehumanized, and they were it was a classic cowboys and Indians.
Yeah.
They were the bad guy. And this scene, just in this microcosm, flips that entirely, where Ernest comes into her home with the cowboy hat on. And you already know from his conversation in the beginning of the movie with his uncle, William Hale, that he is the villain and one of the villains. And Molly, the Native American, is the hero. And, she dons her cultural garb of the blanket, and we see that Ernest is the wolf, and a dumb wolf, but a wolf. And Molly is our hero, and we want to see her defeat these people that are trying to harm her and her family. And it's just this complete inversion of things we've seen popularized in Westerns for so long. So not only does it all have all of that weight to the scene, but I think Lily and Leo just knocked it out of the park.
This scene was also one of the best uses of sound with the thunderstorm. That scene was so brilliant for so many, the reasons you just touched on, the use of sound, which we're going to touch on. I mean, Lily Gladstone commanding that scene over an actor like Leonardo DiCaprio. Wild. It was, I think you nailed it. For best movie scene, first one, I think you nailed it.
Yeah. Any others you would throw out there as contenders?
Maybe De Niro spanking Leo.
So I was like, what is going on here?
It's like every Goodfellas fan wet dream there.
Yeah.
It's like just seeing,
what is happening?
It's like De Niro went back to being Jimmy, and Jimmy's handing out some weird justice to Leo. I don't know how else to say that, but no. But in seriousness, I think it's a series of scenes that aren't back to back. But when Lizzie sees the owl,
so good,
and then her ultimate passing, that whole scene is like a minute or 2 minutes. Where it becomes just Lizzie, and she, you kind of see what's going on in her mind, and then it cuts to back to reality, and you see the pain in Molly and Molly's sisters, and I think just those couple scenes, as a collective, were unbelievable, incredible. I don't know really the word to describe it, but just brilliant, all around brilliant.
Yeah, there was you're right, it was 60 seconds, maybe 2 minutes of this scene.
Yeah.
and what you were referencing with the owl, they explain that, in this community, they believe if you see an owl, it's kind of signaling death. And Molly's mother, Lizzie, is sick, and you kind of enter this almost dreamlike sequence for 2 minutes where you realize that Lizzie's dying and her ancestors are coming there to create her and take her, to her sort of next journey in life or afterlife. And you see she's happy and smiling and walks. And it was like the most moving, like 90 seconds of a story it was so detached from the everything awful we are seeing. It was just a brilliant, like little scene there. Truly great.
It's one of those scenes where, especially in a long movie, you kind of get back in your seat, you're slumped a little bit, you're just watching the movie, but you sit up a little straighter, you lean forward a little bit because it was that kind of scene, where you need to be close. For whatever reason, you feel you need to be closer to the screen to watch it.
Yeah. Agreed. The only other scene I'd shout out, I thought the prologue in the movie was done in maybe the most interesting way I've ever seen a prologue done in a movie.
Yeah, that was a really good scene.
Where it's Martin Scorsese comes on screen as this like old-timey radio show to tell what happened after the events of the movie. And normally this is the scene in the movie where there's either some cheesy music and some montage of photographs of 5 years later, blah, blah, blah happened. And instead it's like a complete period piece of Martin, so self-aware, playing the radio broadcaster who's this white guy telling the story about the great things these other guys did. And it was just so unique and such an interesting choice to end the movie. And you go from that radio show into the Osage dancing and continuing to live on despite all these awful things that have happened to them. And I thought it was a really, really kind of unique and excellent ending.
Yeah. You nailed it. I mean,
casting. Best casting, who you got?
Lily.
Yeah.
Lily was fantastic. I think I would also kind of be remiss if I didn't say De Niro. And I don't know if that's because he's played this role so many times, but when I think of the scheming bad guy who can come off, like you think about Goodfellas, I keep going back to that, but Goodfellas, Taxi Driver, all of these where it's just like something about like the likable side of him, but also knowing that this man has played other roles where they can just do absolute evil, and it fits the role. It's like casting, like we talked about with The Shining and Jack Nicholson. If you're not going to do a true adaptation of The Shining, having Jack Nicholson play that evil character, or of the father, is a great cast. And I think this is very similar to where just the De Niro persona nailed that.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, it's a good time right here to talk about De Niro and Leo. And I thought they both were excellent. I thought De Niro, it's like for our generation, it's not often we get to see De Niro in this role. I did early in my life, but like as a kid, the movies I'm watching with De Niro were like Meet the Parents, and things like that. And you see these other ones he's, done later in his career. And this was De Niro coming on screen and being like, when I want to, I can still throw 120 miles an hour. Like, like it was just like almost this declaration, like, I can do this when I want. And for a director and a story I care about, I'll come out here and put in an amazing performance.
Yeah.
And that's what he did. He was so good in it. And it did not, the story, the way it was told in the movie compared to the book, you were under no delusions that William Hale was the bad guy here. and a truly awful person. But he was excellent in how they showed him manipulating Ernest. Leo was great, but I agree with you too. Lily was so good, and diverting attention from these really just acting megastars in this movie is wild, where she feels like the huge gravitational force in this movie that is just pulling your eyes and attention, and it's so good.
I am so excited to see where Lily goes from here.
Totally.
Because I can't imagine that after seeing that performance, she doesn't have every studio knocking on her door. And she's going to have her choice of roles, and she can pick meaningful roles. She can pick, I think she would do great in like funny, lighthearted roles, because she also had that you saw that soft side of her as well. And I'm just so excited to follow her career.
Yeah.
From here.
Agreed. Only the one I wanted to touch on was Jesse Plemons, cast as Tom White. Have you watched Breaking Bad?
I have.
Yeah. I am incapable of seeing Jesse Plemons as a good guy. He carries way too much baggage for me in my brain as Todd, and how much I despise Todd in Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
That seeing him show up as Tom White, the FBI agent, it was tough for me, man. I'll be totally honest.
I thought he killed it in that role. I thought
he did do good. Yeah. Just hard.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fair. That's totally fair.
Yeah. Also, he was the mean kid in Like Mike, if you remember the movie Like Mike.
Really?
Yeah, with Lil Bow Wow. Yeah.
Wow. Now I got to rewatch Like Mike. Come on.
I know. Yeah. Yeah. Anything else you want to touch on with casting?
Nah. I mean, we've talked about the performances a lot already. I don't think there's anything else we really need to do.
Yeah. Best adaptation choice, going from the book to the movie. What do you think was the best choice they made in adapting the story?
Yeah. And to what you said, I think changing it from a whodunit to this drama, like character piece drama, was really important, because if you, again, agreeing with Leo, if you portray it as a whodunit, you take away from the seriousness of the situation and the importance of telling this story. And I think that was just the single best choice they made. I think I would have liked to see more of it from Molly's perspective, but that change in general was the best adaptation choice that they made by far.
Yeah. I mean, some additional context for, even people who have just seen the movie, or if you're listening to this as you haven't seen either or read one or saw the movie. I mean, it's kind of faithful to what Molly's experience was. We get to a part in the book where Molly you realize she's being poisoned slowly by Ernest. And after so many people around her have died, she locks herself away in the house, and she becomes terrified of what's going on, and she's sick and wasting away like so many others have wasted away from these awful corrupt doctors in this town. And she goes off screen in the book for so long. And that's what happened. And so there was little wiggle room in terms of having her be more active, I would say, in the movie. We still got a lot of her, but having her be a more active role, it just wasn't what happened because of what Ernest was doing to her with the poisoning.
Yeah.
And I'll be completely honest. When I was sitting there in the movie originally, there was a seed of disappointment when they revealed William Hale and Ernest as the bad guys from the start. I didn't have that initial perspective. I was like, wow. Okay. The FBI story is pushed completely out of the movie.
Yeah.
And 2, the villains are revealed the sheep's clothing is removed from the wolves. And I initially did not like that as an adaptation choice, sitting there.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
By the end of the movie, once I'd settled into it, because I had 3 hours to settle into it.
3.5. Yeah.
Yeah, 3. And yeah, just talking, on the way home from the movie. And I think even just reading more about this, it has opened me up to why this was such a smart choice. And I think there's a few things working there in that. Not only do you have this luxury in a book format where you can hop around more easily from chapter to chapter of these perspectives. You can go on these long expositions of all this background of who Tom White is and who his dad was, where he was a warden in a jail and how that influenced Tom. You can get all this exposition on Hoover and why this case was so important to him to actually solve if he was going to get the FBI involved. And you can build out this huge cast of characters in a book that you don't have to pay in a movie.
Right.
And that's not feasible in a movie. And it was also really jarring if you're hopping around from all of these scenes, even though that's what I wanted to see initially. So I think as I've reflected on it, I've really come around to, cutting the FBI out and not making them the hero who rides in on the horse to save the day when it took Molly going to Washington to get them to come is the right choice. And also David and Marty's comments that this isn't a whodunit, this is a who didn't do it, and it's not a mystery. It's all of these, literally everyone who is not Osage in this community is exploiting these people. It's not a mystery. Everyone is doing it. And that was I came around to that 100%.
Okay. I actually think that, to what you just said, that's also part of my worst adaptation choice, in the fact that I don't think they really did enough to show the state of law enforcement and how terrible it was to them, and the great lengths and efforts they had to go to petitioning the United States government to actually do something about this. And they did show Molly going, and they showed the individual who took the train and then I think they stabbed him in the movie, but he was thrown off the train in the book. I wish they had been able to show a bit more of that struggle that the Osage went through to get that to happen, or somehow made it feel bigger than it did in the movie. Yeah.
I think you're right. In terms of that setup, you don't really come away from this movie seeing the lengths and the real uphill battle that the Osage and Tom White had to it's not about solving it, but of convicting and getting through the complete stranglehold William Hale has on this town.
Yeah.
And the people profiting from dying Native Americans have on this town.
Yeah.
And you're spot on. In the book, we are seeing agents who come in and, like we said, wind up dead. We see this lawyer who is going to Washington get killed in Washington before he reaches the FBI offices. This guy who was going to write on it get thrown from a train. I mean, there are just endless stories in the book of any person who comes close to this, it ending poorly for them or them running away, like we said.
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily fully get that in the movie. So you're spot on.
Do you have any other bad adaptation choices or worst adaptation choices for you, or do you want to talk about the use of sound in this movie?
Let's hit the sound. What do you got there?
Dude, there are two scenes in particular that I think absolutely crushed it. And that is one that we've already talked about, the dinner scene, when you have the rain coming down. And this is where I'm going to have to give Boomer Randy some credit and why you got to watch this in theaters, or at least with some really good surround sound, because that scene's happening and then the thunderstorm starts and you hear the storm envelop you and starts, coming towards you. And then all of a sudden you're hearing it from behind you. And it's this, weird sense of the darkness and the dominating factor that you had talked about, but also this soothing storm and watching Molly take this comfort in, the powerfulness of that. And that transported me. And the other one is when they have the close-up conversation of William Hale and Ernest, and you have the fire going, and they're only lit by the fire, and you have De Niro's face lit by the fire, but you hear the crackling around you, and as he's talking, and Leo does a really good job in this scene of showing the despair that he has of he's stuck now doing this no matter what, and it gives you that oomph to the evilness of that conversation. And I thought both of those scenes were masterclasses in the way sound can transport somebody watching a scene.
Yeah, those are excellent. In terms of sound, we started with almost a typical Marty start to a movie where it's like these quick cuts and like these real loud soundtrack cues of we see the Osage dancing and all of this, and then it really settles into this subdued, powerful use of sound through the rest of the movie. And I think you're completely right that those are some of the best ones. Minor grievances. I got a lot of problems with you people. What do you have here?
I got a lot of problems with you people. Now you're going to hear about it.
Any things that just kind of irked you in the adaptations?
Yeah. So in the book, they talked about what a Sooner is and how that's someone who is cheating the system and sneaking across native lands and really not, following the law. And I thought this was the perfect opportunity to make fun of Oklahoma. And Marty didn't take the shot. Neither did Glenn. So, hook 'em horns. OU sucks. It's a pretty major grievance, actually, I think. Now that I say it out loud, it's a pretty major grievance for me.
Yeah. I don't want to continue to dunk too much on Oklahoma, but I'm going to continue to dunk a little bit. And I'm sorry if we have any Oklahoma listeners out there. This is one of those states. I'm also from the Northeast. The amount I've thought about Oklahoma in my life is so minimal that it's really it's just one of those states that unless you live near it, you're just not thinking about it. Yeah, the things I could tell you about the state of Oklahoma are so few that I could probably jot them down right now on one hand. I just know nothing about it.
Yeah. Well, if OU didn't suck so much, then Texas might float away into the ocean. So, we do need OU a little bit.
Yeah.
If nothing else, just to keep the great state of Texas here.
Yeah. Got to have someone to beat. Any other minor grievances you got?
No, but what do you got?
Yeah. Like we said, I'm a minor grievances guy.
You?
Yeah, I am. I'm not going to say length because I enjoy more when it comes to my art in a way. I like long songs. I like long movies. I like long episodes of television. Just I'll take everything I can get. But I understand that's a turnoff for some. But give me a pee break.
Yes.
Give me a pee break.
Can we bring back intermissions? If a movie's over 3 hours, give me 10 minutes.
It should be an intermission. I needed it. I mean, I took one because it was my only option. That kind of wound me up. My other minor grievances, you said this before, and I'm going to reiterate it. I wanted more of Tom Waite's gang. I think the lengths some of his other detectives went, and some of the Native Americans went who helped really put themselves out there and risked
yes
to solve this. I wanted a little bit more of that
Okay.
in the movie. That bothered me. Selfishly, I did want a little bit more Molly, and not Molly in the sense of her time with Ernest, because like we said, there's a reality to her shutting herself in. I wanted a little bit more Molly and her family.
Yes.
The book kicks off with her sister. I mean, kind of one of the first dominoes to fall in this story is Molly's sister Anna dying.
Yes.
And it is right after Henry Roan, another Osage, who is found dead. And at first it's just like, oh, there's a random murder that happened. And then Anna is found murdered as well, Molly's sister.
Mm-hmm.
And they're starting to think maybe this is more, I don't know if premeditated is the right word, but maybe there's a little more of a conspiracy to what's going on than just random acts of violence. And I thought the actress who played Anna, Cara Jade Myers, I thought she came in hot for the time she had on screen. I thought she was really good.
Yeah.
And there's also just all this inner family things that are going on where Anna is on and off dating Ernest's brother.
Mm-hmm.
Is it brother or cousin? I can't remember. And then she winds up dead. And, Molly's distraught, and just seeing the interactions more of Molly's family side and the Native Americans who were also being affected by that. I just wanted a little bit more time with them, as opposed to, like we said, they did great, but just I would have taken maybe one less Leo DeNiro or gang, Ernest and his, Wild West hooligans scene, and a little bit more time understanding what this was doing to Molly and her family or others that were affected. That was my other minor grievance.
Yeah. Did you have any Easter eggs?
I'll give one thing I learned in this, that in the book, that is an Easter egg in a different franchise. So in the book, they go through the lengths of talking about how law enforcement worked in the Wild West, and especially this time of the dying Wild West. And they explain the Pinkertons, who really invented what we know of the term private eye. They were the first ones to use that symbol, and they were kind of these hired detective groups.
Yeah.
And I thought immediately about, in Red Dead Redemption, the video game, there are the Pinkertons, which are kind of the villain, a little bit of the villains in Red Dead Redemption.
Okay.
And are this detective agency. And I was interested to learn that the Pinkertons were a real thing, and that they also invented the private eye. So a little bit of Easter egg that you kind of see in Red Dead Redemption. For the Pinkertons. That was all I got.
Good one. Yeah.
Yeah. Quote.
I got one from the book and two from the movie.
Yeah.
My favorite quote from the book is, "There lingers memories like a half-forgotten dream of an enchanting world drawing on a child's consciousness and its wonder and mystery." Thought that was great. That was awesome.
Yeah.
And
it's almost one of those quotes that's so good that I'm like, do I even know what that means?
Yeah. Yeah. You have to read it twice.
Yeah.
You like put your book down, you're thinking about it. Yeah. And then from the movie, when these are actually both from Leo, and they're kind of back to back.
Yeah.
And when he goes, it's just the way you are that bothers me. I just don't mind talking to you much. That's all. And I was dying. I thought that was so funny.
Yeah.
And those were my favorite quotes from the movie.
You need a drink?
Yeah. I'll take a drink if you got one.
No.
And why'd you ask?
Well, you seem nervous, is all.
See, the thing is, Bill, I ain't got no nerves. None at all. It's just that I don't like talking to you. That's mostly it.
Well, have I done something to bother you, Ernest?
something bothering me? No, just the way you are that bothers me. That's what it is.
But yeah, he had just some real idiot quotes that got some chuckles in our theater.
Yeah.
The other quotes I had were Molly in the dinner scene asking Ernest, can you find the wolves in this picture? And it was like this almost meta fourth wall breaking, like saying to the audience, and maybe even saying to the people who've read this book, like, this is not a mystery. Like, we know who the wolves are.
Yeah.
In this story. I thought that was a great one. Also from the movie, just classic Ernest being a dumbass when Tom White, Jesse Plemons, first arrives on the scene and he knocks on Ernest's door. And this was all in all the trailers when he's like, I came down from Washington, D.C. to see about these murders. And Ernest stupidly responds, he's like, see what about them? And Tom's just like, we'll see who's doing them. It's just like,
oh, I was sent down from Washington, D.C. to see about these murders.
See what about them?
See who's doing it.
Like, you honestly don't know if Ernest is like an absolute moron and is just answering these questions truthfully, which I think he might be.
Yeah.
But just classic. The one I had from the book was, and this is what I thought a lot about reading, and I think summarizes it, was history is a merciless judge. It lays bare our tragic blunders and foolish missteps and exposes our most intimate secrets, wielding the power of hindsight like an arrogant detective who seems to know the end of the mystery from the outset. And I thought a lot about this one and it might be a hollow victory that these people are now viewed in such a horrible light, and we know what they did. But, hopefully most of the time, at least history will hold these people accountable and all the awful things they did to profit during this time, and all these secrets that they had and all this exploitation is completely in the light, and they can't hide from that anymore. So I thought that was a good quote from the book.
I mean, that begs the question, who's the real villain for you in this story?
Yeah. I mean, there's the complete obvious answer of William Hale, Ernest, nearly every white person in Oklahoma living in Osage County here, there are very few on their side, being the Osage. They were just being exploited in every fashion by the bankers, the doctors. I mean, this corruption went so deep, the government. But I think it's got to be the FBI, and I will exonerate Tom White from that. But the FBI and the government really let down these people so much. I mean, not only did the Osage are only in Oklahoma because they were forcibly removed from their land.
Yeah.
In, I think, modern day Missouri, Kansas area. And then after there was oil found in their land, did anybody care about them? And after they're getting completely exploited and murdered, the FBI literally can't be asked to do anything. The US government does not care, to the point where they are being paid by the Osage to come and investigate this. The fact that the law was upheld so poorly for the Native Americans in this situation is just a huge blunders, even an underused, kind of phrase there. But the FBI and the U.S. government and the local law enforcement really let down the Osage community.
I agree with everything you just said. I don't have anything to add to that. I think you nailed that. That was perfect.
Moving on to I don't have a ton of favorite IMDb trivia. This just came out. The only fun one that I'll point out is that Lily Gladstone, playing Molly, was in the process of registering for a data analytics course. She was giving up on acting and was entering her credit card information when she got a Zoom request from Martin Scorsese. This was kind of during the height of COVID-19, when she was considering a career change, and she's like, I don't know what's going to go on, and I'm not getting roles to begin with, and movies are shut down at the moment. And she received this request from Martin Scorsese, and Leo said that there was no reading. Marty just instinctively knew that Lily was the one. And he said that Marty felt that there was just a truthfulness in her eyes that he saw, even over the Zoom call, that he's never met somebody for one of his roles and then immediately afterwards felt this instinct to say, like, let's not wait another minute, let's cast her. So I thought that was a neat little story.
So, Randy, wrapping up, who you got? Who won the book? Who won the movie?
Book. I think history, I think it's people like not only David willing to investigate and tell this story, but the Osage wanting to tell this story to him. And it keeps that alive, and it keeps these stories in front of us. And even though it's not a happy one, not all stories are happy, and we have a right to know and remember these things. So I think history wins with the book. Okay. I like that one. What do you think? No, I like it. Movie? Who won the movie?
Lily.
Yeah.
Gladstone
Lily
might have won the movie. I know that's not like a meta answer, but that was awesome. Scorsese fans won the movie. It's a very classic Scorsese movie. Who do you got? What do you got?
No, Lily. Lily won the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was no surprise that Leo and De Niro put in a great performance. There's no surprise that Martin made a really just well-crafted movie.
Yeah.
But in all of that, Lily stole the show. She was great. Yeah. All right, let's move on to the closing stuff.
Yeah,
and
man.
We'll get out of here.
Cool. I got nothing to add. I think one thing we didn't touch on that, again, I would not believe if Hollywood wrote it and it feels like a bad movie, but for Tom White to become the warden of the prison that Hale goes to, like, come on. What?
Yeah.
What are we doing here?
Yeah. Yeah. So like we said, the last third of this book enters into this prologue, this extended prologue almost, where you see what happens after. And not only what happens after immediately, but modern day. And one of these stories, like you said, you would never believe it. Tom White becomes the warden of a jail, I think in Kansas. And after he's been the warden there for many years, William Hale and Ernest get transferred to that jail. And he comes out to greet his new prisoners, and they come walking up the path with the officers bringing them in. And I think this is a testament to the type of guy Tom White was. William Hale even said after this, I forget if it was William or Ernest, that he never treated them differently than any other prisoners there. No. That he treated them as complete equals. And you just get this sense that Tom was a really good dude in a time when there weren't many great dudes in sort of his position. Yeah. Yeah, that was great. Do you recommend this book to people? Yeah, I think for sure. I said earlier, I gave it very high remarks. I stand by that. I think definitely the book is the starting point for me here. Yeah. Do you recommend the movie?
I mean, yeah, it's a good movie if you have 19 hours to kill.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a good movie. I think it's a good. I think we're just about to do good adaptation, good standalone. So I'm just going to jump into that. But I think it was a pretty good adaptation and a good standalone movie. And like I said, book gets high remarks. Movie also gets high remarks. Not quite as high as the book, but that's what I got. What about you? What do you think about the starting points? And then was this a good adaptation for you?
Yeah. Definitely recommend the book. Even if you don't like nonfiction or you're worried this could be a dense history that's a lot to get through, not at all written in this way. It zips along. And I think he does a great job. We've already said that.
Yeah.
Movie, I would say definitely watch it. You know, it's going to be on, I'm assuming, Apple TV, with it being an Apple Studios production. I think it's a great watch at home. You can pause, make some popcorn, go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
But it's Scorsese, you know, doing some of his best. I don't think it's his upper echelon of movies, but I think it's a good second tier Marty movie that I liked a lot. I think in terms of the adaptation and standalone question, I'd say it's weird because in terms of a lifting of the story of the book to a movie, very different in their approach. But in terms of the success of the adaptation, I think it's good. I think it's a good adaptation and a good choice there. Cool. Yeah, let's rate it. Book. I mean, you gave you said a 4 out of 5 for the book.
Yeah, let's hear it from. I want to hear what you thought.
Yeah, book. I'd say this is a solid. I can't give a range. I'm going to say this is a 4 out of 5 book, and that's a very good book. In my opinion, I think you said the same. This, and like you said, in terms of nonfiction, probably a 4.5 or a 5 out of 5.
Yeah.
Movie, I would give this probably a 4 out of 5 as well. It's a very good movie. Definitely not perfect to me, but a very good movie nonetheless.
I love it.
All right, ranking wise, we have currently number 1, The Last of Us, 2, Jurassic Park, 3, Dune, 4, The Shining. Where are you slotting this in terms of an adaptation?
In terms of an adaptation, I'm slotting it in just behind Dune.
Yep, me too. Yeah. So it goes Last of Us, Jurassic Park, Dune, Killers of the Flower Moon, The Shining.
Yeah.
Yep. Agreed.
We've officially got a top 5.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna have to bump something next week, and I think I don't know. I'll be interested to see what you bump next. But thanks for listening, everybody. Next episode, we're gonna be heading back into the desert, not of Arrakis, but of New Mexico for the Trinity test, and covering one half of the Barbenheimer phenomenon. We're gonna be talking American Prometheus, the biography of J. Robert Oppenheimer, and the 2023 Christopher Nolan adaptation Oppenheimer. If you have thoughts or questions and you do want to share them, find us on Instagram at Read Watch Play Podcast. You can email us at readwatchplaypod@gmail.com and make suggestions, future stories, talk about past episodes, whatever you want. Send us a shout there. You can find us on all your major platforms, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcast. Please rate and review, 5 stars only, as those things help more people find the show. And honestly, rating is important, 5 stars, but telling people about it, getting your friends to listen, that's the most important thing of just kind of growing the audience in the podcast. Thanks for listening. Nick, thanks for joining me on this one. And I got to know, can you spot the wolves in this podcast?